Welcome to the Rhymekeeper's Lantern. Tonight's warning comes from the winter camps, from Cedar country, where the trees stand too close, the dark comes early, and some things are said to keep the trunk between themselves and a man's eyes. This is an old woods tale of fear, disappearance, and the kind of rule men obey only after someone fails to come back. Keep the lantern lit and listen closely. By daylight, a logging camp looks like poor men making a living where better men would not stop. There is nothing mysterious in it then. You have the bunkhouse smoking low through its chinks, the cookhouse door banging, wet mittens strung near the stove, saws hung to dry, team horses steaming at the hitch rail, men bent over their plates, red-eyed, split-handed, too tired to quarrel properly. Snow tramped black around the woodpile, the swamp road hard as iron, the cut itself opening farther every week into what used to be unbroken timber. By daylight, it is all work, arithmetic, and cold. But a winter camp is not judged by daylight. Night is what tells on it. Night tells whether the men have learned the country or only entered it. A green camp leaves things unbarred. A green camp lets a man cross the yard alone after second bell. A green camp laughs at the old rules because the old rules do not read like reason in a ledger. An old camp bars the bunkhouse door proper. An old camp counts heads before the lamps are turned down. An old camp leaves one bottle uncapped by the chopping block and asks no questions of it. You boys wanted the true version, not the tavern one, where it is all claws and leaping and devil's laughter. Not the paper book version, where some fellow who never slept in wool blankets with his boots frozen stiff makes it sound like a circus animal. You wanted the camp version, the one the old hands told when the stove settled, and the wind came wrong along the eaves. Very well. Then keep quiet while I tell it. This was north of the Boldwell Beck in Cedar country, in a winter so mean the axes rang like glass some mornings. We had 12 men in camp, 2 teamsters, a filer, a scaler, the cook and his helper, and old Ansel Creed for foreman. Ansel was one of those men who did not talk to hear himself talk. When he said a thing twice, you obeyed it the second time, or went elsewhere for wages. The camp sat on a rise above Black Cedar Swamp. Not pretty country, useful country, good timber, bad underfoot, and a fog that liked the low places even in hard cold. The spruces stood thick there, and the cedars closer still, all trunk and shadow and no clean sight line in among them. A man could be 30 feet off and hidden as a buried nail. We had rules from the first week. No one took the privy path alone after dark. No one answered if spoken to from the timber unless he saw the speaker's face first. No one rounded a tree in haste if he felt watched. That last one sounds foolish, till you have been in close timber long enough. A man in Cedar learns that his mind is not his friend after sundown. He begins to think the wrong things with great conviction. He hears what is not said. He feels eyes where there are none. Or there are some. That is worse. I was 19 then, and knew enough to think every camp custom was half religion and half mischief laid on green hands. The bottle especially. It stood each night on the chopping block near the fire path, a squat brown bottle with rye in the bottom of it, never emptied, never claimed. If I asked who left it there, the men would shrug or spit or tell me to fetch in another armful of wood. Only once did old Nels Morrow answer me plain. Nels was the oldest axeman in camp, bent some through the shoulders, beard white in patches, left hand missing the top of one finger. He had a way of looking into the fire as if reading from it. "What's the bottle for?" I asked him. He said, "So the thing will smell us wrong." That was all he gave me. The first sign came with the horses. Team horses know more than men, but have less pride about admitting it. A man will hear a queer sound and reason himself into danger just to avoid seeming childlike. A horse scents bad country and stops. One afternoon, Dobie Kane was bringing the sled-back light along the Cedar lane, and the lead mare locked her legs dead. Would not back, would not turn, would not take the whip. She only rolled her eyes wide and stared between two trunks where the lane narrowed. Dobie swore at her till his voice shook. Then he left the team there and came in on foot, hatless, saying something had laughed in the timber where no man stood. Ansel took 2 men and went back with him before dusk. They brought the team in. They found nothing. That is how such things begin. Not with proof, with a place where proof ought to be, and is not. After that came little matters. A sawyer named Pete Hall said he heard footfalls keeping time with him on the far side of the trees while he hauled wedges from the edge of the cut. Every time he stopped, they stopped. Every time he moved, they moved. Then the dogs would not lie with their noses to the bunkhouse wall that faced the swamp. They turned themselves the other way and whined in their sleep. Then one of the younger teamsters, a French boy called Luke, came in before full dark with his mouth hanging open and frost on his lashes. He had gone only to fetch a drop trace chain from the edge of the lane. He said that while he was bent to lift it, something heavy moved around the back side of the cedar nearest him, matching him as he shifted. He never saw it. That was the point. He moved left. It moved left. He straightened, and it rose with him, though still behind the trunk. He said he knew, as certain as a man knows fire from snow, that if he stepped around too quickly to catch it, it would already be waiting on the other side. Old Nels asked him, "Did you turn?" Luke said, "No." Nels nodded once and said, "Then you still belong to yourself." No one laughed at that. You must understand the kind of camp it was. Men vanished in that country sometimes for plain reasons. A bad step through crust into black water, a tree kicking back wrong on a fell, a wander in storm, drink, fever, a blow to the head no one saw given. There are enough honest ways to die in the woods that no sensible man goes hunting for dishonest ones. That is why the Hidebehind lasted as a camp warning, because it lived in the margin left by all the ordinary griefs. In the old camps, the safest things were seldom written plainly. They were kept at the edge of the page, near the tear, where only the careful would think to look. If a man simply vanished and the snow told less than it ought, and the timber had stood close, the old hands had a name ready for what had done the taking. They did not always say it aloud. Sometimes they only said, "He turned." That winter I heard the name first from Wyatt Mackenzie, who had worked the pineries west of Superior before I was born. Wyatt was a scaler and kept the cut figures in a black book he wrapped in oilcloth at night. He drank little, cursed rarely, and was accounted steady. "Is there truly such a thing?" I asked him one evening while he added up the week's tallies. He kept his pencil moving. "There is a thing men mean by it," he said. "That's not an answer. It's the only one worth having." He He licked the pencil tip, made another figure, then looked up at me. Every camp has one patch of timber that asks too much of a man's nerves. In some places, it's windfall. In some, it's hemlock ravines. In Cedar, it's the far side of the trunk. A man begins to think something is staying there just beyond him, and when he feeds that thought, the woods take hold. You mean it's in the mind? I mean it gets in there first. That was Wyatt Mackenzie. He never gave a boy a whole answer if half would trouble him longer. 3 days later, he was the witness. Remember his name. A true warning needs one. The weather had turned brittle. No fresh snow, only old snow squeaking underfoot, and the stars sharp enough to make the yard look colder than dark. Wyatt and Jonah Price had stayed late at the tally shed sorting board figures for the foreman. They left together just after second bell, lantern between them, the bunkhouse no more than a short walk off. Jonah never came in. Wyatt did. He came through the door without his cap, carrying the lantern so tightly the handle had burned his glove black. He was gray from beard to eyebrows and could not get his first words out straight. Ansel sat him down by the stove and put coffee in him. It did no good. At last, Wyatt said he should have kept his eyes ahead. No one pressed him for a minute. Then Nell said, very low, "Tell it right." Wyatt stared into the stove grate while he spoke. He said they had come along the Cedar side path, lantern low because of the wind, when Jonah slowed and looked toward one of the big trunks off the trail. Wyatt asked what he was at. Jonah said, "Something is pacing us." Wyatt told him to come on. Jonah took 2 steps, then stopped again. "It's behind that one now," he said. Wyatt said he was speaking nonsense. Jonah said, "No, hear me. It keeps changing trees but never comes clear." Wyatt still thought nerves, or drink, or one of those fits of the imagination that take men when they are overworked and out too long and cold. He told Jonah to walk and not look sideways. Then Wyatt said, from somewhere in among the cedars, there came a sound like laughter trying not to be heard. Not loud, not long, just enough. Jonah turned toward it. Not all the way, only with his shoulders first, then his head, the way a man does when he means not to show fear. "Come on," Wyatt told him. Jonah did not move. Then he made a queer little sidestep, as if he had seen where the sound came from and meant to get around the trunk before whatever made it could shift again. Wyatt caught his sleeve. Jonah jerked away and snapped, "I see you." That was the last clean thing he said. After that, he began circling the cedar. Not running. That is what unnerved Wyatt most. Not a blind panic. Something worse. Jonah moved quick but careful, leaning inward, trying to catch sight of the far side. Once, twice, 3 times around. Each round faster. The lantern light swung with him and showed nothing but bark, roots, snow, shadow, bark again. Wyatt told us he never saw another body there. Only this. Each time Jonah rounded, something on the unseen side seemed also to have rounded precisely with him, always hidden by the same thickness of trunk. A disturbance, a dark shift, the feeling of 2 things moving in agreement, one visible and one not. Then Jonah said, in a voice Wyatt did not recognize, "It is smiling." Wyatt snatched the bottle from his pocket flask and threw it at the cedar. The liquor broke on the bark and ran down. The smell rose sharp in the cold. And from the far side came a sound Wyatt said he would hear in his coffin. Not anger, not pain, but disgust. Deep, wet, patient, as if something had been cheated of a mouthful. The lantern blew out. Wyatt stumbled back. He called Jonah's name once. No answer. He struck a match, then another. By the second, he saw only the cedar, the snow, and the ring Jonah's boots had cut around the roots. No tracks leaving, no body, no sign worth swearing to. Only the ring. I know what you are thinking because I thought it too when I first heard it. That Jonah ran off in the dark, and Wyatt lost him. Men said that in camp the next day, though not within Nels's hearing. Ansel sent out a search at dawn. They found the cedar easy enough. They found the boot ring. They found Jonah's mittens 20 yards off where the snow lay unmarked. They found one place on the far side of the trunk where the bark was pressed in polished dark at the height of a shoulder or cheek, as if something had leaned there long enough to wear frost from the wood. They did not find Jonah Price. The foreman told us all the practical thing. He said a man confused in the dark can run crooked. He said the swamp might have taken him under crust. He said no one was to spread camp nonsense. Then he doubled the rule against walking alone after dusk. That is how practicality behaves when it is seen enough. It denies with its mouth and obeys with its hands. After Jonah went, camp life grew meaner. Not dramatic, meaner. Men hurried where they used to stroll. They chose the longer open route rather than the cedar path, even in deep cold. No one sat by the door if he could help it. When the dogs growled toward the wall, no one cuffed them quiet. Little pieces of pride were given up. That is what fear costs first in a lumber camp. Not courage. Pride. The next sign was small, and worse for being small. Someone found marks on the bunkhouse wall at dawn, shoulder-high beside the window nearest Jonah's empty bunk. Not claw marks ripped wild through the wood. Nothing so theatrical. Just 4 narrow grooves in the frost-silvered outer log, close together, shallow and deliberate, as if some hand had rested there to steady itself while listening. Ansel shaved them off with his knife and said it was branch scraped from hauling. No one believed him. That night Nell spoke more than usual. The stove was red, the men quiet, and the wind had a thaw note in it that made the roof drip though the ground stayed iron. The Hidebehind, he said, isn't a beast the way a bear is a beast. Don't go making that mistake. It is a camp name for what happens when a man enters the timber too far with his attention split wrong. The old boys gave it a shape so the young ones would obey the rule. But mind this, giving it a shape did not make it less real. One of the teamsters asked what it wanted. Nell said, "The man's turning." That was all. I have thought on that half my life. Maybe the old fools believed in a creature, black and long-limbed, shifting behind the trunks. Maybe they were right. Maybe the thing was only this, that some patches of woods can take a man by degrees if he keeps trying to know what ought to be left unknown. And the camp, being full of practical men, built a monster around the truth so it would travel better by firelight. Either way, The rules were sound. Do not answer laughter in Cedar after dark. Do not go alone where the trunks stand thick as posts. Do not try to catch sight of what will not come into the open. Spring came late that year. We finished the cut short-handed. Jonah's pay was sent south to a sister in Eau Claire, and his name was said less as the weeks passed, the way names are in camps because work does not stop for grief, and men cannot keep every loss warm forever. But on the last night before breakup, when the teams were readying to haul out and the bunkhouse had begun to smell of departure instead of staying, Wyatt Mackenzie handed me his black tally book and told me to hold the lamp. He opened to the page for the week Jonah vanished. There, among the scaled totals and board foot counts, one line had been written small in the margin in Wyatt's own hand. Never go round a cedar to prove your courage. He saw me reading it and shut the book. That for Jonah? I asked. That for any man, he said. Then he took the uncapped bottle from the chopping block, poured the last of it into the snow and said, "Leave one good lie in every camp. Sometimes it keeps the truth from getting too near." I never worked cedar country after that if I could choose otherwise. But I have been old a long time now, and I will tell you the plainest thing I know. There are losses the woods make honestly, and there are losses that come because a man helps them along. The hide-behind, whether beast or warning, belongs to the second kind. So if ever you find yourself in winter timber toward dark, and the trunks stand close, and you get that ugly certainty that something is kept just out of sight beside you from tree to tree, then remember what the old camps remembered. Keep to the open side. Keep walking toward light. If you carry drink, open it. If you hear a laugh, let it laugh alone. And if one tree seems to have a farther side than it ought, leave it that side. Do not round it. Do not look smart. Do not try to know. Because men have gone missing in plain ways since the first axe bit pine. But the ones taken by the far side of the trunk are the ones that never seem to leave enough behind. That was tonight's warning from the Rhymekeeper's Lantern. If you ever find yourself in winter timber after dark, keep to the open side, keep walking, and do not go around the tree. Keep the lantern lit. Old rhymes, dark warnings. Never sing the last line.